Are we ready to roll, guys?
Yeah,
Jesse, Alberto. Today we have Joanne here, good friend of mine. She has done work for companies such as Xerox, Century 21, Pepsi, won international marketing competitions with Ernst & Young, had a chance to go to France.
That was
cool.
super awesome.
Fun.
Yeah.
We met through a mutual friend, John, at Move Team,
Yep.
which you do work for as well too. And your company is YEG Marketing?
That's right.
Yeah. Branding and social media, content strategy
Right?
studio.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, no, I appreciate being here. It's definitely cool to see your studio and everything that you do here, and it's all very polished, so it's super fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We're here for you to give our audience marketing insights.
Perfect.
But before we do all that, yesterday we were at this event, McEwen Marketing Club, Speed Mentoring.
Yeah.
How'd you find it?
I think it was really great. I think the biggest thing about students is that they're always wanting to learn more, which is fantastic.
Right.
But I think it's very interesting when we say, you know what's going to make you happy? At the end of the day, they're asking how they're going to stand out, but I'm just saying, you know what, just be yourself. So it's very interesting to see their mindset shift when you're telling this kind of advice when you're seeing them.
Do they want to hear that? I also said that.
Yeah, really.
People ask, one guy asked me, what's the definition of success to you?
Oh, deep.
Yeah. And I, of course I went back to you got to be happy at what you and fulfilled what you're working on, what you're doing. And I don't think they expect that kind of answer. So.
That or the hard work answer. So a lot of times they're wondering, how did you get started? How did you build a company from the ground up? That's usually their top question, of course. And usually when you mention the hard work that's involved and what actually went with it, for example, I did free work to try and build my portfolio. I think that's one thing that maybe they didn't want to hear too. So maybe that's one thing we mentioned.
I had a student here today, and it was an 8th student actually, and they were telling me that their professors are telling them to not do free work and always give a price because you're valuing, always charge because you're worth whichever. So they were surprised to hear that from me. I think that was the opposite.
Oh, you told them that, hey?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we have to do free work.
Yeah.
So I think no matter what level you're at, you still got to pitch, you still have to show your worth.
Well, that's the biggest thing too, is when we started, we had nothing. So it's hard, even though you had the great name of YEG Marketing, they're like, well,
That's
who did you work for, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
SEO is awesome for that, but at the same time too, you're thinking to yourself, okay, how am I going to stand out from these other agencies who are also starting? And it's really hard because anyone now can start an agency, which is fantastic. That's really awesome. We can empower them. But at the same time too, it's like, how are you going to get those bigger pitches without showcasing your work first?
So what was the number one question you got from the students yesterday?
I think the number one thing was the biggest challenge or the biggest success you've had.
Right.
And I have to say that my biggest success was shown when I had failures. So I think that's something that they didn't really expect, was that every time someone said no, every time that I came in as a very young professional in the industry and trying pitching ideas and being told no, it was just more motivation for me to grow and to expand rather than the successes. Like, successes are great and they're worth it, but it was more the failures that I learned from.
Right.
Yeah.
I received a lot of, how do you find a job when I graduate? And what are some hard or soft skills that, I need to have to get that job or to get to where I'm going or whatever that may be?
Right.
The number one thing I said is network and meet people. And then they also did not expect to hear that. So.
Yeah, I think they were surprised too, because I had told them how I got my position at Pepsi was the fact that I actually went out and networked a lot during my university degree, and turns out the person who I was networking with that I actually took out for coffee was the area manager for Western Canada for Pepsi.
Wow.
So it was just surprising that they were not necessarily hiring for a position, but because you put yourself out there, network, it's all about relationships, as you and I both know. So yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So backstory a little bit. So out of school, you're working well, then you decide to open your own business.
Yes.
So why did you jump into that?
You know what? When I was 18, I loved business in general. So I already knew in the beginning. I started this company called Kings and Rooks.
Okay.
It was at 18, and I was debating over, should I continue in university or maybe I should just, do this full time. It was called Kings and Rooks, and it was the idea that you can't be the king without the rooks. You can't be a king without the people around you and the people supporting you. But I noticed with that side of things, because at the time, I don't think Shopify was a big thing. Etsy was maybe kind of coming off the ground.
Are you dating yourself right now?
Yeah, say just a little bit, right? So that can give a bit away. So I ended up noticing that what I loved about that product was the marketing side. I didn't love so much the inventory, the selling. That was really hard for me. And so that's why I decided to kind of just go into university for marketing, because I already knew. Now in university in marketing, I also noticed that when I was able to, see what everyone is doing, that there were a lot of things that Edmonton could bring with regards to marketing, and that's why I decided to start YEG Marketing.
Right. Yeah. It's a good name.
Yeah.
What are some challenges you had when you got, your first, you just opened? Is this yourself when you just opened?
It started off as a partnership. So this is something that is very difficult about doing business as a partnership, is I didn't realize how in sync you have to be with your partner. It started off as something that was just a hobby, and when it's just a hobby, you don't work as hard towards it because you feel comfortable, because I had a full-time job at the time.
Okay.
I just felt as though it was something that I could just do on the side. It wasn't serious, and I didn't end up pitching myself the same way that I would have now that it is putting food on the table. So that's kind of how it started. Eventually, I decided to leave the corporate job because I noticed that I was starting to get very, very busy. And I was also noticing that there's a lot of people I could help, and you and I are the same way, that we love helping people, and I love small businesses. People are very hardworking. So that's kind of where I decided to make the jump. Now, at the time, the biggest challenge was I had to quit my corporate job, which was bringing in quite a large sum of money, and start something from the ground up, which was a huge leap, right? Security-wise, I was getting married. Well, I am getting married. And also, too, it was just, we were living in a very expensive apartment as well. So it was a lot of different pieces that financially was really challenging. So finally, the way I decided to take the leap was my sister was diagnosed with health problems, and that in return allowed me to realize how short life was. So this is when I decided to just take the leap and just go for it.
Right. Yeah. So it's going back to what's important for you and what you like to do, and that should be what you're doing.
Exactly. No matter how challenging or daunting the experience was, it just made me realize that life's too short and I might as well do what I want to do. Right. Yeah.
So you took the leap, opened your own shop. How do you find your first client?
This is very exciting because when I was taking the leap, people already were excited because they couldn't work with me before because I was doing it something full time. So people just started to grow through word of mouth. Went through my contacts, and I think out of all my contacts that I contacted, I think 3 people came in. Now, we have to also remember that during that time span, I was also still networking quite a lot. Mm-hmm. I attended events on a monthly to bi-monthly basis, and I was also making a lot of connections along the way. So it didn't just happen like that. I think it was mostly the relationships I built, and finally, when I was able to take that leap, after contacting and building relationships over the years, they were like, you know what, Joanne, we'll give you a shot. Right. Yeah.
So just to rewind a little bit, so something very important to do is attend all these events. Where do you find these events, and which ones do you know to attend to?
This one was a hard leap especially because you go to events and then you realize maybe this is not the right crowd for you. This is maybe just not aligned with your values, and that's okay too. But I think I went online and I searched networking events in Edmonton and I found those. But I think it's just really finding which ones fit you and your values, because depending on which group, I personally am a huge believer in supporting local, so I'm always trying to find local events. But if someone else is looking for something else, like business development, etc., that could be for them. So I was just Googling them and showing up. It's
Take
a
the risk and show up.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And then building your team. So if you've grown your team since then, how do you find the right person for your team? I think we all have this challenge. It's a question I get a lot. Jesse behind the camera, we talk about this all the time as well. How do you find the right person for the team?
Multiple pieces, I think. First one was asking the right questions. This is something that in the early on days, I didn't really ask questions. I just focused too much on the qualifications. I was just so focused on, okay, what can you do? What can you provide me? And then all those other pieces there. The next piece there that I also noticed was to know how they show up in the interview. So for example, even though the one person wasn't as qualified, I found she was more honest, she had more integrity, she was able to actually bring something forward and say, I don't know, which is a daunting experience in an interview in comparison to someone who would just, make up an answer, and that just showed me a different thing too. And then the last thing that I'm moving forward with is I'm no longer doing interviews in like a boardroom setting. I'm doing it more in a coffee shop. So one of the biggest mentors that I've known, she actually interviewed me a while back for a position, and she did it in a coffee shop. And she was looking at what I was ordering as a Starbucks drink.
Oh, interesting.
That was how she determined it. And it's surprising how many interns.
What is your Starbucks drink go to?
It was a London Fog with almond milk, or it was a chai latte with almond milk. Either one of those, I just forget, but I knew it was with almond milk. But I think
extra hot, extra full.
No. It was not that. Yeah. It's still an interview. I didn't want to do too much. But the interviewees, she noticed that everyone was too nervous to ask for a drink. All of them said, no, it's okay, or they just got water, just something basic. They never got what they wanted. If you were looking for someone who is confident, self-reliant, they will order what they want. So I was one of the few that actually ordered what I wanted, and then that was the biggest piece.
Right. May we know who this mentor is?
Yeah, absolutely. So Lauren Andrews, so she is a marathon runner, and she's absolutely fabulous. She's involved in the athletic community, and I think she's just a really great person.
Amazing.
Yeah.
How'd you find her? Because the question I get is, so how do I find a mentor? So how do you find these mentors?
It's hard to find a mentor per se. Like it's really hard to go out there and say I am looking for a mentor. For myself, when it came to mentorship, it was more just about relationships, and it's just kind of going back to that every day. Is that because I meet so many people so much, it's just really honing down on who is able to be there for you when you need them most, and also who is able to tell you if you are wrong to your face in a very elegant and also, structured way to give you critical advice. And that's something that I find is hard, is that a lot of people will always support you, which is fantastic. Like my mom supports me, and she's fantastic, but not enough people are giving critical and constructive advice. Mm-hmm. And that's the hardest part.
Amazing. Yeah, what I like to say too is find someone who's done what you want to accomplish.
Yeah.
And that would be good for mentoring in that area. And you don't have to have one mentor for all areas of your life. There could be a different mentor for that different areas as well.
Of course.
And I think you can't be afraid to ask. A lot of people are afraid to ask. We have mentors that I've reached out to that I did not think would even respond, and now they're a mentor because you just asked. And two, they don't necessarily have to be a mentor in terms of you're speaking to them, you're checking in all the time.
Yeah.
It can be someone you're following.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing about mentorship is that it's just all versatile. It doesn't have to be, you're right, it doesn't have to be just business, or it doesn't have to be just lifestyle. So it's kind of nice that you're able to go back to them. Yeah.
Great.
And I also mentioned too, I forgot to mention that you're actually one of my mentors,
awesome.
which is super awesome. So that's kind of nice that even though that we have that relationship, it's not necessarily that you're my mentor, but you actually give me a lot of mentorship advice.
Great. Glad to help.
Yeah.
Cool. Social media marketing, something you really dive into as part of your business and what you do for your clients. Tell me what's trending now. Where do you think, and this is a question a lot of people ask all the time, where should I be in terms of what platform is best for our business? What should I do? What would your take be?
Right, this is very interesting because it's probably very, very left field, is that I am very much a believer in where TikTok is going. TikTok is one of those things where the attention there is a lot higher. I find that Instagram is really, really hard to grow right now. And I think that's what everyone has been noticing, is that, especially with algorithms, et cetera, it's really hard to grow. And you've seen that shift between Facebook attention and Instagram attention, etc., and that's another platform. Another thing that I think is being very underutilized, especially in Edmonton, is the Pinterest world. And so this is especially for builders, interior designers, something that has a very beautiful picture associated with it. I find that Pinterest is very underutilized too. Right. So that's kind of the trends there. Now, when it comes to growing the business, it depends on what kind of content you're putting out on all platforms, of course. LinkedIn is very popular as well. But I think that we're going to see a shift from Facebook and Instagram to a lot of these other platforms. That's what I'm seeing. Especially with some of the youngins using Snapchat a lot more often. I'm very impressed that they use that platform a lot. So
how do businesses like TikTok and Snapchat are things that businesses don't generally think about? The misconception or conception is TikTok has a lot of young teenagers on there, and they're just doing fun videos, comedy, dance moves. I'm a home builder, let's just say.
Right.
How do I get my content there? That's not my audience. These people are not purchasing. That's going to be what I hear a lot. What would you say to that?
I think the biggest thing there is TikTok can also be used for other platforms. So you're able to stretch that content. You're able to share to other platforms too. And also, TikTok is one of those things that even though 40% are younger, 60% are older. So it's one of those things where people are like, oh, they're all 16 or whatever. That's only 40%. So if you look at several hashtags for regards to hashtag EduTalk, hashtag career, a lot of these pieces, they can talk about the behind the scenes of the business. So for example, it doesn't have to be someone dancing for the company. It doesn't have to be something fun and edgy. It could just be, here's a before and after of how it is to build your home. And that tends to get a lot of attention because the span of attention on TikTok is 15 to 60 seconds, rather than the long video that you're usually used to seeing of 10 minutes on YouTube.
Right.
Yeah.
So you like TikTok?
I very much do. Yeah. Yeah.
Influencers, something else I wanted to ask you about.
Right.
I know you have a lot of influencer friends. What are your thoughts about influencer marketing in 2020? I know it was really hot past 2 years. People could ask for a lot of things. What are your thoughts now? And do you think it's relevant for branding?
I think influencer marketing is going to start to dwindle down a little bit to more micro-influencer marketing. I think what businesses are seeing is that maybe there isn't the same ROI that they would have hoped for with some of these larger influencers. However, I think it just depends on who's doing the campaign and is it the right influencer for that campaign. I think it's going to be definitely useful for micro-influencers, but we're going to see a little bit of a shift from large followers, etc., to many small micro-influencers that have a higher impact on sales.
So just in case our audience doesn't know, what is a micro-influencer?
So we could say, let's say it's like 1,000 followers, let's say, can make you a micro-influencer. Or a micro-influencer could just have enough connections and enough people commenting and engaging that showcases that you are actually engaging with your audience. So you can even have 700 followers as a micro-influencer, but the fact that you have 30 comments every single time on every single your post, 7 shares, a lot of people bookmarking the post, you are a micro-influencer.
Should you still say dive into the influencer market or any type of business? You definitely recommend it?
Depends on the business.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it depends on the business, depends on their strategy, depends on their branding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I agree.
Yeah, you agree.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on influencer marketing?
I think it can be utilized when you have the right person and the right brand ambassador for that. And it can be used in a lot of different ways. I really like how Lululemon has a brand ambassador program. And it's not that they're like posting and promoting an item, let's say. They're part of a culture, they're part of the group, they feel part of the team. And the way you can build out influencers in that sense is definitely the way to go.
I agree.
Yep.
Very much agree.
And you can build a culture outside of just your organization. A culture can be, within anybody who's your customer or anybody from the outside.
Well, that's the biggest thing too, is that a lot of these fitness places, like for example, YEG Cycle, I go there, I feel very much part of the YEG Cycle family because they just made that, and I could be their influencer for them without them even paying me because I feel part of that community. So you're very much right.
Part of the community.
Yep, absolutely.
What is your take on the importance of personal brand? And the reason I ask you is, I'm in that position here, is you have your company, YEG Marketing, which you do a lot of work on, but you also do a lot of personal brand plays as well too.
Totally.
How do we separate those two, and does every company, and let's say any C-suite or whatever level it is, should they have a personal brand?
I think people have personal brands and they don't even know it. Like, for example, a lot of these people in the C-suite kind of executive, a lot of their personal brand is because of their relationships, etc., but they don't showcase a lot of it online, let's say. I definitely think personal branding is very much important. If you look at the business structure of YEG Marketing and my structure as values, the values are actually different, but they do definitely go hand in hand. So for YEG Marketing, it's integrity, welcoming, etc. For myself, it's more about collaboration and connection. But they do very much go hand in hand. When it comes to personal branding, I have very much seen a lot of businesses in Edmonton grow because of their personal brand. Is that at the end of the day, people will only work with you if they know, like, and trust you. And if they know, like, and trust who you are as a person, they will definitely bring in business to your business.
What's an example of one that, that has a good brand and personal brand? I'm thinking of our friend John.
John is a good one.
Yep.
John is a
Move
very
team.
good one for Move Team. He has his own personal brand. Of course, he has his connection with builders, etc. He also has a Move Team, which has its own personality for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Another good one would be Justine from Lipstick Empire. I very much look up to her as well. So she has her personal brand, which is very much, the beauty side of things, but the Lipstick Empire has expanded itself to include all the ladies there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Building your agency. What are some of the challenges you have?
I guess the reason I pause is because there are so many challenges. It's actually quite daunting to think about how many challenges there are, but I guess the biggest one that I could say for all of them would be knowing your worth. That was probably my biggest challenge, was I came from a corporate world where, you know, you have your 9 to 5 and you get paid a salary, and that is how you get paid bi-weekly at the end of the day. How was I supposed to price myself and know how to price myself, or know how to go out there and know my worth there when I'm looking and I'm thinking, oh, I don't have experience, but in reality I do. So it's one of those things where on a resume, I've gone into interviews and I felt confident because I'm like, yes, I have all the qualifications for the job. But when you go out and pitch, it's not the same thing. So that was my biggest thing, is knowing my worth, knowing when to say no, and knowing my value.
Awesome. And how do you get to know that though?
I think that's a never-ending thing. I think one thing that really helped was tracking my hours. So last week and the week before, I started to track my hours, to track how much time is going into it. And then you're able to see the time versus value. Another thing too is market research, of course, taking a look at competitors, seeing where you would stand, not so much on a price point basis, but just what you would bring to the table that is a little bit different or a little bit of a flair. And then I think the last thing that I would probably do with regards to knowing my worth is just knowing that I am that type of person who definitely underpriced myself. So having people's opinions or asking other people how much am I worth, that actually ends up working a lot more.
Awesome. Piece of advice for companies. We'll get a lot. What should I do for marketing?
Yeah.
I'm not saying like which platform, but let's just say, what should I be doing for marketing right now to grow business?
Right.
How would you answer that?
I would ask them first what they're comparing it to, because the comparison is what separates everything. So if they're comparing what should I do for marketing to generate business, then they're thinking, what should I do to generate sales? Like, what are they comparing it to generate whatever it is? Exactly. Another thing too is to dissect. Marketing is a whole entity, and there's so many things underneath. But people just hear marketing, they think they know what marketing is. Mm-hmm. And I usually compare it to something that they probably can relate to. So for example, you have a home builder, but under the home builder you have trades, you have plumbing, etc. But it all goes into the structure of building the home. And the same thing for us is that we have marketing, but all these different pieces into getting to you towards your goal, whatever that goal may be. So that's one thing too. And then another thing to ask them is to put them in the hot seat, because it's always asking why. A lot of my clients, after they've gone through the process and they're really happy, they kind of laugh because, Joanne, you asked us why maybe 5 or 6 times in one sitting. Because if you ask them, why do you want to grow the business, or why do you want more sales, or what the value proposition is for them, then you get to know a little bit more about the person.
That why question is so important.
Yeah.
When they ask why, just keep going.
Just keep going.
5 levels deep.
And they're like, well, I don't know, I never thought about it, right?
1-2 resources that you can tell our audience that you really impact, your day-to-day, something you read, watch. Is there something that you can advise people?
It's not so much maybe
books,
what I read.
YouTube,
Yeah, I guess I do
read. Is there
read.
something that you like?
Yeah, I guess there was one is Everything is Figure Outable. That one was a good book because I'm always the type of person that likes everything structured, but it was just nice to say, like, you can figure that out. And the next one is The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F. That was another one too, because as I said, it's hard to determine your value. So putting up that face of, what, if they say no, don't care about it. Mm-hmm. It's okay. It's not a reflection of you. So don't worry about it. Yeah.
Cool. Before I end off here, I want to just drop, you have a workshop coming up end of February.
Yes.
29th, is it?
Saturday, February 29th.
Yep.
It's TikTok for Business, so that'll be really fun. The curriculum will be interesting because I understand I'm a very polished person online, so I understand for some people TikTok can be very daunting. So we're going to take it from all the way to step 1 with what TikTok is, the demographics, etc., and then what kind of content you can put out to help that buyer who may be looking.
Right. And how can we attend or find info on this workshop? We'll put it in the
Oh, we put that in the link below. That'd be
awesome.
awesome. But also I will have it on my website under workshops, and then also it's on Eventbrite.
What's next for yourself and YEG Marketing?
I think for ourselves it'll be more the workshops, and everyone keeps telling me this, as well as yourself, which is fantastic, is everyone says that I'm really good at explaining things at workshops and that people really enjoy attending the workshops that we have. Especially because we try to get a lot of people involved. So I think that's going to be the next step for us, is more of that education side, as with you guys, I think, too.
Yeah, for sure. We want to be able to reach more people and help more people around the world. That's part of our mantra here.
Yeah, so it's fantastic.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's awesome learning about your whole journey.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Great.
Thanks.